before the world understood gravity as we do today, before space was seen as curved, not flat, before time was understood as something that can stretch and bend under the weight of mass and motion, there was a man, a quiet man, a slow thinker, a dreamer who often seemed distant from the world around him, as if part of him was always living somewhere else, somewhere deeper, somewhere unseen. His name was Albert Einstein, and what he discovered did not just change science, it changed the way humanity understands reality itself. But here is something surprising. As a child, many people thought he was not special at all. He spoke later than other children. He learned in a way that didn't fit the expectations of teachers. Some even believed he was slow to understand, that his mind did not move quickly enough for the world he lived in. Yet inside that quiet mind, something extraordinary was happening. A universe was forming, not the universe of textbooks or classrooms, but a universe of imagination, where light could be chased in thought experiments, where time could stretch like a rubber band, where invisible forces could be questioned instead of accepted. While others memorized facts, he questioned them. While others accepted rules, he asked why those rules existed at all. And while the world moved forward in straight lines, his thoughts curved into strange and beautiful possibilities. He would imagine riding alongside a beam of light. He would wonder what the world would look like if gravity were not just a force pulling things down, but something that bent the very fabric of space itself. These were not simple thoughts. They were the seeds of a revolution. But at the time, they looked like daydreams, quiet reflections, ideas too strange to matter. No one could see what was forming behind his calm expression. No one could hear the silent questions building inside his mind like distant thunder. And yet, slowly, inevitably, those questions began to grow. They grew beyond curiosity, beyond imagination, until they became something powerful enough to challenge centuries of scientific belief. Because sometimes, the greatest changes in understanding do not come from loud voices or sudden breakthroughs. They come from quiet minds that refuse to stop asking, what if everything we believe is only part of the truth? Chapter 1. Early Life. Albert Einstein was born on March 14, 1879, in Ulm, Germany. He grew up in a modest, middle-class Jewish family in a world that was changing rapidly with new technology, new ideas, and growing scientific curiosity. His father worked in electrical engineering, dealing with early electrical equipment and innovations, while his mother had a deep love for music, often filling their home with warmth, emotion, and melody. This unusual combination of engineering precision and artistic sensitivity would quietly shape Einstein's inner world in ways no one could predict at the time. As a child, Einstein was calm, observant, and often withdrawn into his own thoughts. He did not speak as early as other children, which caused concern among his parents and relatives. Some even feared he might be slow in development. But what they could not see was that his mind was simply not rushing to follow the surface of the world. It was diving beneath it. He preferred silence over noise, reflection over conversation. While other children played loudly, Einstein often sat alone, thinking deeply about things most people never questioned. Then came a small, ordinary moment that would quietly change the direction of his life. One day, his father gave him a simple compass. It was nothing special, just a small object with a magnetic needle inside a case. But to young Einstein, it was nothing less than a mystery unfolding in his hands. He turned it, he tilted it, he tried to confuse it. But no matter how he moved it, the needle always pointed north. Always, without hesitation, without explanation. And in that moment, something inside him awakened. Because he realized something profound. There were forces at work in the world that could not be seen, touched, or explained by human senses alone. Yet they were real, powerful, constant. That invisible force became his obsession. He began to wonder, if something unseen could control a simple compass needle, what else in the universe was invisible but powerful? Was space itself filled with hidden structures? Was time something more than just ticking seconds? Was reality deeper than what human eyes could perceive? That single childhood question grew quietly in his mind, shaping every thought that followed. What unseen forces govern the universe? He did not know it yet, but this innocent childhood curiosity would one day grow into ideas that would transform physics, challenge Newtonian certainty, and completely reshape humanity's understanding of space, time, and gravity itself. Chapter 2. School Years. Einstein did not fit into traditional schooling. In classrooms built for repetition and discipline, he struggled to blend in. The system expected students to memorize formulas, repeat definitions, and accept established answers without hesitation. But Einstein's mind resisted that kind of learning. He disliked memorization. Facts without meaning felt empty to him, like words without music. Instead, he was drawn to ideas that had depth, concepts that could be questioned, broken apart, and rebuilt in new ways. What he truly loved were questions, not simple ones like, what is the answer? But deeper ones like, why is this the answer? And what if the answer is incomplete? This way of thinking made him seem unusual to his teachers. Some considered him average, others saw him as difficult or even rebellious in his quiet way. He did not always respond quickly, and he did not follow instructions blindly. In a rigid academic environment, that was often misunderstood, but inside his mind, something entirely different was happening. While lessons moved forward step by step, Einstein's imagination moved in leaps, jumping beyond textbooks, beyond classroom walls, beyond what was already known. He was not just absorbing knowledge, he was reshaping it internally, testing its limits in silence. And then came a thought experiment that would define his intellectual journey. He began to imagine something unusual, almost impossible. What would it feel like to ride on a beam of light? He didn't treat it as a joke or fantasy. He treated it as a real question. If the universe followed laws, then even impossible ideas could reveal something important when examined deeply. He pictured himself moving alongside light itself, faster than anything else in existence. He tried to understand what he would see, what he would experience, how reality would appear if he could match light's speed. But the more he thought about it, the more contradictions appeared. Would light still move away from him? Would time behave differently? Would space itself change shape? These questions had no answers in the textbooks of his time, but they did something far more important. They forced him to rethink the very foundations of physics. That single question, simple on the surface, yet endless in depth, would later become one of the stepping stones toward a completely new understanding of space, time, and reality itself. Chapter 3. Struggling Years. After finishing school, Einstein's life did not follow a smooth or predictable path. He struggled to find stable work. He applied for jobs again and again, but was repeatedly rejected. Universities did not see him as promising. Employers did not see him as exceptional. In the eyes of many, he was simply another young man with uncertain prospects. For a time, it seemed as if his unusual way of thinking had no place in the world. Eventually, he found work at a patent office in Switzerland. It was not a glamorous position. It was not scientific research. It was a quiet government job, far removed from the great universities and laboratories where major discoveries were being made. His task was simple: to review inventions submitted by engineers and inventors, checking whether they were original and workable. On the surface, it looked ordinary, even repetitive, but hidden inside this ordinary job was something extraordinary. For the first time in years, Einstein had something priceless. Time. Time without pressure. Time without academic judgment. Time without constant rejection. While others saw routine paperwork, Einstein found space for thought. During the day, he stamped documents, read technical descriptions, and examined mechanical ideas. But in the quiet moments between tasks, his mind was never in the office. It was elsewhere. It wandered far beyond the walls of the patent office, beyond machines, beyond inventions, beyond the limits of what was written on paper. He imagined the universe not as something fixed and simple, but as something alive with hidden rules waiting to be discovered. Thought about motion, light, and time. He questioned what it meant for something to move faster or slower. He began to wonder whether time itself was absolute, or whether it could change depending on how you moved through space. While his hands handled documents, his mind handled galaxies. While his eyes saw ink and paper, his imagination saw stars bending light across vast distances. In this quiet routine, something powerful was forming. Not loudly, not suddenly, but steadily, like a current flowing beneath still water. Ideas began to connect in ways no one had connected before. Questions that once felt separate started to merge into deeper patterns. And slowly, almost unnoticed, a revolution was being built. Not in a laboratory, not in a university, but in the mind of a man working an ordinary job in an ordinary office. A revolution that would one day change everything humanity believed about space, time, and the universe itself. Chapter 4. the miracle year 1905. In 1905, everything changed. That year would later be remembered as Einstein's miracle year. Albert Einstein published 4 scientific papers within a single year, an almost unbelievable achievement for someone working outside the traditional academic spotlight. Each paper carried deep implications for physics, but one stood above all the rest in its impact on human understanding. That paper introduced what is now known as special relativity, and with it came a truth so shocking that it shattered centuries of accepted belief. It revealed that reality is not as fixed as people once thought. Time is not fixed. Space is not fixed. They are not absolute, unchanging stages where events simply happen. Instead, they are flexible, connected to motion and observation. If you move faster, time does not behave the same way. It begins to slow down relative to others who are moving differently. Space and time are not separate, independent things. They are intertwined parts of a single structure that responds to speed and perspective. This meant something revolutionary. Reality is relative. There is no single universal clock ticking the same for everyone everywhere. There is no single universal experience of time that applies equally to all observers. Instead, different observers can experience time and space differently depending on how they move through the universe. What once felt like absolute truth became something flexible, dependent on motion and perspective. This idea completely overturned the classical view of the universe established by Isaac Newton and other great thinkers before him. The universe was no longer a rigid machine running the same way for everyone. It became something far more complex, dynamic, and deeply interconnected. For many scientists at the time, this was difficult to accept. It challenged intuition. It went against everyday experience. But experiments and mathematical reasoning began to confirm it step by step, and slowly the impossible became reality. What Einstein had done was not just solve a problem in physics. He had changed the foundation of how humanity understands existence itself. Space and time were no longer separate. They were woven together into a single flexible fabric. And that fabric could stretch, shift, and bend depending on motion and energy. Chapter 5. Theory of Relativity. Later, he expanded his revolutionary ideas into what is now known as general relativity, a theory that would redefine gravity itself. For centuries, gravity had been understood in a simple way, an invisible force that pulled objects toward each other. Apples fell from trees, planets orbited the sun, and everything seemed to follow a straightforward rule of attraction. But Einstein saw something deeper. Gravity is not just a force. It is the bending of space and time itself. To explain this, imagine space and time not as empty, rigid emptiness, but as a stretched, flexible fabric spread across the universe. A smooth, invisible sheet that everything exists within. Now, place a heavy object on it. A massive star like the sun does not just sit in space. It presses down into this fabric, creating a deep curve or distortion around itself. And when smaller objects like planets move nearby, they do not get pulled in the traditional sense. Instead, they follow the curved paths created by that distortion in space-time. So planets orbit not because they are being pulled by an invisible string, but because they are moving along the natural curves in the fabric of the universe. That is gravity. This idea completely transformed physics. It replaced the old view of gravity as a mysterious force acting at a distance with a new understanding. Gravity is geometry. It is the shape of space and time responding to mass and energy. Suddenly, the universe became something dynamic and alive in structure, constantly shaped by everything within it. Stars, planets, light, and even time itself were all part of this flexible cosmic fabric. With this single insight, Einstein didn't just improve physics, he rebuilt it from the ground up, changing forever how humanity sees the universe. Chapter 6. Global Fame. Albert Einstein soon became world famous. Scientists across Europe and beyond began to recognize the depth of his ideas. His theories were discussed in universities, debated in scientific circles, and slowly accepted as some of the most important breakthroughs in modern physics. The world was astonished that a single mind could reshape humanity's understanding of space, time, and gravity so completely. But despite the growing fame, Einstein did not change in the way people expected. He remained simple in his lifestyle. He did not chase luxury. He did not surround himself with status or material excess. Even as his name became known across continents, he carried himself with quiet humility, often appearing more like a thoughtful traveler than a global icon. What truly gave him joy was not fame, but music. He loved playing the violin, often turning to it when he needed to think, or when ideas felt too heavy to hold in words alone. Music, for him, was not just a hobby, it was another form of thinking, a different language for expressing harmony and structure in the universe. While others saw a scientist, he saw himself as someone exploring beauty through both equations and melodies. He also avoided unnecessary attention. Public praise did not interest him. He was more comfortable with questions than admiration, more drawn to curiosity than celebration. And above all, he held a belief that defined his entire approach to life and science. Imagination is more important than knowledge. To him, knowledge was limited. It described what humanity already understood. But imagination was limitless. It allowed the mind to reach beyond what was known, to question reality itself, and to discover truths that had not yet been written. It was imagination, not memorization, that had led him to his greatest discoveries. And so, even at the height of global recognition, Einstein remained what he had always been at heart, a quiet thinker, guided not by fame or authority, but by curiosity, wonder, and the endless desire to understand the universe in deeper ways. Chapter 7. Personal Beliefs. Albert Einstein was not just a scientist focused on equations and theories. He was also a thinker deeply concerned with humanity itself. To him, understanding the universe was never meant to be separate from understanding human responsibility within it. Knowledge, in his view, carried moral weight. It was not enough to discover how nature worked. Humanity also had to decide how to use that knowledge. Einstein believed science should serve peace, not destruction. He understood that every powerful discovery carried two possible futures, one that could uplift humanity and another that could harm it if misused. Because of this, he often spoke with caution and concern about the direction in which scientific progress was heading. As the world moved into an age of growing political tension and global conflict, Einstein became increasingly vocal about war. He spoke openly against violence, warning that technological progress without moral responsibility could lead to devastating consequences. He feared a future where scientific knowledge might be turned into tools of destruction rather than understanding. One of his most serious concerns was the misuse of scientific discoveries for military purposes. While he did not directly participate in building weapons, his earlier theoretical work became indirectly connected to developments that he later viewed with deep regret and reflection. This awareness weighed heavily on him. Einstein came to realize that science does not exist in isolation. It is always shaped by the choices of those who use it. A discovery in physics could remain an abstract idea, or it could become something that reshapes the fate of entire nations. Because of this, he continued to speak out for peace, international cooperation, and responsibility in science. He believed that humanity's greatest challenge was not just understanding nature, but learning how to live wisely with the power that knowledge brings. For him, true intelligence was not only measured by how deeply one could understand the universe, but also by how carefully one could protect it and the people within it. Chapter 8. World War II. During the rise of global conflict in World War II, Albert Einstein made a life-changing decision. He left Europe and moved to the United States, seeking safety and a more stable environment during a time when political tension and war were spreading rapidly across the world. He eventually joined the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, where he continued his research in a quieter academic setting. Although Einstein was not directly involved in building weapons, his earlier scientific ideas played an indirect role in the development of nuclear physics. Scientists studying atomic energy drew upon the foundations of modern physics, foundations that were influenced by his work on matter, energy, and relativity. Over time, this scientific progress led to the creation of nuclear weapons during the war. When Einstein learned how his ideas had become part of a chain of developments leading to destruction, he was deeply troubled. He did not see science as something meant for harm. He had always believed it should expand understanding, improve life, and bring humanity closer together, not push it toward devastation. This realization brought him a heavy sense of responsibility and regret. In the years that followed, Einstein became increasingly outspoken about the dangers of war and the ethical responsibility of scientists. He spoke not as someone seeking fame, but as someone reflecting on the consequences of knowledge when it is used without moral guidance. He warned that scientific progress without humanity could become dangerous. Instead of focusing only on equations and theories, he turned much of his attention toward global peace efforts. He advocated for international cooperation, disarmament, and the idea that humanity must learn to control the power it creates before that power controls humanity. Einstein's voice became one of conscience in a world recovering from destruction. He reminded people that science itself is neutral, but its impact depends entirely on how it is used. And through this perspective, he became not only one of the greatest scientific minds in history, but also a powerful advocate for peace, responsibility, and the ethical use of knowledge. Chapter 9. Final Years. In his final years, Albert Einstein lived a quieter, more reflective life in Princeton, away from the intense public attention that once surrounded him. He continued working at the Institute for Advanced Study, surrounded not by experiments or laboratories, but by equations, paper, and deep thought. His focus shifted toward an even greater goal, something that had consumed his imagination for decades: the search for a theory of everything. He hoped to discover a single, unified framework that could explain all the fundamental forces of the universe under one elegant mathematical structure. Gravity, electromagnetism, space, time, everything connected through one complete idea. It was an ambition that matched the depth of his curiosity, but also one that proved extremely difficult. Despite years of effort, he was never able to fully complete it. The universe, in its complexity, continued to resist a final unified description within his lifetime. Yet even without that final answer, his mind never lost its energy or wonder. In old age, Einstein still thought like a child in the most meaningful sense, always questioning, always imagining, always refusing to accept that curiosity had an endpoint. He continued to ask simple but profound questions about reality, time, and existence, as if every answer only led to a deeper mystery. On April 18, 1955, Einstein passed away in Princeton. His physical journey ended, but his intellectual legacy did not. His ideas on relativity, gravity, space, time, and the nature of the universe did not fade with him. Instead, they became foundational pillars of modern physics, guiding generations of scientists who followed. Even today, his theories continue to shape how we understand black holes, the expansion of the universe, GPS technology, and the fundamental structure of reality itself. Einstein may have left the world, but the universe he helped reveal continues to expand in human understanding. One question, one discovery, and one spark of imagination at a time. Conclusion: Albert Einstein changed how humanity understands reality. He showed that time can bend, space can curve, and imagination can unlock the deepest secrets of the universe. These ideas did not just transform science, they transformed how we think about existence itself. The universe was no longer seen as a rigid, unchanging structure, but as something dynamic, flexible, and deeply interconnected. But beyond the science, his life also carried a lasting message, one that continues to inspire people far beyond physics. You don't need to be the fastest or the loudest. You just need to be the one who dares to think differently, because every major breakthrough in human history did not begin with certainty. It began with a question that others were afraid to ask. Einstein's legacy is not only written in equations, but in mindset. He proved that curiosity matters more than conformity, and imagination matters more than limitation. And that is why his ideas still live today, not just in textbooks and laboratories, but in every mind that chooses to wonder a little deeper than the rest. If you enjoyed this story, like, share, and subscribe for more historical journeys. This is English Story World, where history becomes storytelling, and storytelling becomes dreams. Good night.